Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to the first in a series of new webinars. These webinars are designed to enlighten the M&A community around some of today's most critical issues when growing by acquisitions. My name is Jim Jeffries, and I'm the chairman of the M&A Leadership Council, which is a unique collaborative organization made up of some of the world's best professional service providers who work together to provide training, certification, and tools to corporate M&A executives. In today's session, our exclusive transaction services and due diligence partner, BDO, will deal with IT due diligence and one of today's most overlooked, yet most critical diligence initiatives, cybersecurity. This webinar session discusses why it's critical to assess a target cybersecurity posture and also provides an overview of the role of IT due diligence in the process. Cybersecurity and IT due diligence help assess the target security risk and provide what to consider in the development of a cybersecurity governance strategy. Cybersecurity and IT due diligence, when performed together, help determine if there are substantial risks which impact the value of the transaction or the cost of post-transaction integration. A detailed cybersecurity assessment, coupled with IT due diligence process, is becoming an urgent requirement for almost all acquirers and must be incorporated into the acquisition process. Before we get started, I want to introduce our two presenters for today's session. Both of these people are top executives and specialists with BDO and featured in the training programs that we hold around the country. First, Kristen Trahan-Winford is the Managing Director for Transformation and Growth at BDO. She has more than 20 years of leadership experience specializing in financial management and technology-related areas, and today with a strong focus which is on cybersecurity. We also have Iskander Yavar, and he's a partner with the firm as well as the National Leader for Management Advisory Services at BDO. As leader of BDO's Management Advisory Services team, he helps drive executable solutions by drawing on industry knowledge, multidisciplinary backgrounds in technology and strategy, and deep experience to settle matters quickly and efficiently. Where there are challenges around the intersection of business process, supporting technology, and strategy, Iskander's team drives solutions that deliver value in a pragmatic manner. You're going to enjoy these two people, and we have a lot to learn today. Kristen and Iskander, listen, welcome today. We're happy to have you in this webinar. And I'm excited about the content that we're about to present. So Kristen, why don't you lead us off?
Jim, thanks so much, and thanks for the opportunity to present today with M&A Leadership Council. We're thrilled to be here. So first, I want to comment on some of your comments and really the timeliness of this presentation. Obviously, we've seen a lot in the news recently about breaches and ransomware. And as you mentioned, this is a topic that is becoming increasingly urgent in the due diligence process, but unfortunately is one that is somewhat overlooked. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time just giving you a key overview as to why this is important and some of the key takeaways that you need to be looking for. So first, let's talk about the business case. Why is cyber due diligence important? And as you can see, since 2005, we've had a significant increase in breaches that have occurred up until 2007. And they impact all industries, so healthcare, retail, insurance, et cetera. And this encompasses all types of breaches and threats, from social engineering to phishing to malware to ransomware. And on that note, some of the hottest breaches include phishing and ransomware. And let's just take a look at a small use case, if you will, of a breach and the impact that it had on the financials of a corporation, and we'll talk a little bit about Target. So some of you may remember when Target was hacked, and they lost an estimated total revenue of $252 million. They also spent another $10 million involved in customer litigation, and none of that includes the settlements that they had to make in lawsuits from the financial institutions that they were dealing with, and that was to the tune of $100 million. So clearly we have real dollars at stake, and understanding your cybersecurity posture, not only as an organization, but also as a potential acquirer during an M&A process, is critically important. So a few other numbers just to walk everyone through. 48% of cyber attacks are caused by malicious or criminal intent. There's $4 million in the average cost of data breaches. In healthcare alone, the average cost per lost or stolen record is $355. And I was just actually at a conference last week, and I heard a new stat, which I also found to be stunning, which was downtime in healthcare due to a cyber breach accumulates at the rate of $5,000 per minute. So again, industry is important, but all people in all industries need to be aware of their cybersecurity posture. Just a few more statistics before we walk into some of the things that people need to be aware of in the M&A and due diligence process. So there were about 1.5 cyber million attacks each year. We recently saw the example with Yahoo, and they were in the midst, of course, of their acquisition by Verizon, was attacked, and 500 million of their user accounts and personal identifiable information was exfiltrated. One interesting fact that is not on this, but I think it's also important to understand, in December of last year, Time magazine pointed out that the cybersecurity industry will be valued by $200 billion by 2020. So this is an industry that is going to continue to grow significantly, and businesses are making a significant investment in. And the reason for that is really the fact that we are all vulnerable to cyber attacks of different types, and we're going to talk a little bit about that right now. I think everyone's probably familiar with Robert Mueller's famous quote, he, of course, being the former director of the FBI, who stated that there were two types of companies, those that had been hacked and those that will be hacked. And I would actually like to add a third, which is those that have been hacked and don't realize it, because there are a whole lot of those out there. And from an M&A perspective, if you are in the midst of diligence of a corporation, it is incredibly important to understand what their cybersecurity procedures and controls are, have they been breached, what type of assessment have they had to ensure that there is not some sort of malware or agent on their system that they don't know about. And then obviously before you go through and integrate them, it's critical as well that there's another deep dive done to make sure that we're not transporting any malware onto the legacy systems. But let's just talk for a few minutes about how hacks occurred and why it is so important to really understand in a diligence process what hardware, software, et cetera, is in the environment. So first, we're going to start with reconnaissance. So it is stunning to me, but there are hackers out there, whether they be from state-sponsored or criminal organizations, whose job it is to do nothing but sit there and do reconnaissance on senior-level executives of different corporations. They want to understand if they've updated certifications. They want to understand if they've changed jobs. They want to see who they're connected to, and are there entry points that they're interested in that they want to build sort of this use case for. So once they've done the reconnaissance and they understand, yes, this might be a company that's interesting to us, or this might be an individual that's interesting to us, then they work on the initial compromise. And this can be done several ways. Obviously, personal email is one of the most prolific. And just a few key updated stats there. I mean, 53% of email that people receive is spam, and certainly from my own experience and my own personal inbox, I would certainly agree with that. But out of 131 emails, at least one has malware in it. So think of all the emails you get, and many of them you delete, but when you click on that one, and by the way, what if you're checking your personal email on a work computer? You've now just brought that malware into the work environment, and it may not be detected. So once the hacker gets in, they establish a foothold. More often than not, they're just going to sit there for a while and watch the flow of information. Who's going where, who has what privileges, what type of information is being transferred. And then they'll begin to escalate their privileges. So they're going to want to see who has the administrator's rights and who can get into some of the sensitive information. And that's when they start moving around through the system. You know, they may come in through an email, but then they want to go and they want to look at the financial records, or they want to go and find the employee records where there's social security numbers and home addresses, et cetera. In 2016, there were over 463 instances of ransomware that were detected in the United States, and that's with an average ransom of $1,000. And of course, as we've heard from the most recent ransomware attack, oftentimes even once the ransom was paid, the data was destroyed. So really, again, understanding what a target's cybersecurity posture is, having done that full assessment, understanding what their data recovery, what their business continuity planning looks like, what their InfoSec policy looks like, all of this in the diligence phase is critical so that you're not buying something that will cause problems later on down the road, or even bringing on infected software and hardware to legacy organizations. So how do you deal with all of this in a diligence process? We've all been there. You're drinking water from a fire hose. You have a million things that you're having to look through and try to assess where are the big fires. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so some of the fires, when it comes to cybersecurity, may not necessarily be visible. Again, these things could be sitting out there and may not be recorded. There may not be logs to support this. So we recommend that you take a very holistic approach to cybersecurity risk. First of all, you need to understand what information does the target have that could be of value, whether, again, it be personally identifiable information, whether it be IP, whether it be financial information, information regarding future M&A activity, really assessing what the sensitive information might be and seeing where it is stored in their environment. That is the first step, because if you don't know what you need to protect, it's going to be difficult to figure out where it is and how it might be granted access. A risk assessment, again, whether you're doing it in diligence or you do it before integration, obviously we believe strongly that it needs to be done in the diligence process, and we can help you design a strategy and a program around that if that's not something that you're comfortable or familiar doing. Also understanding what the cyber threats are out there. We work closely with a number of agencies and have our finger on the pulse of new and emerging threats. So again, depending on industries, we might know that certain hospitals are under attack, or other sorts of retail vendors are in the midst of a potential issue, and that's something that is, our clients were able to help you with as well. And then, unfortunately, when something does happen, we can come in and help remediate the situation with incident response, as well as help you understand what your needed coverages are from a cyber insurance perspective. On the outside, you'll see our continuing loop. We can't stress enough the importance of looking at your internal organizational culture as you go through diligence. Is there a culture of compliance and risk management? Is there tone at the top that this is something that has been important to the senior leadership of the company that you're acquiring? If not, that's something that you need to know as you go into an integration process, because you're probably going to have to do a little more heavy lifting around integrating those employees in a culture of compliance and risk remediation. And all of this is just getting more and more complicated. You hear a lot about the Internet of Things. It is estimated to grow to 26 billion connected devices by 2020. And perhaps the even scarier statistic is that it takes 2 minutes to breach an IoT device. So there are many, many entry points, and really looking at this from a holistic perspective in terms of making sure that you have all of the bases covered as you go through a diligence process and then move into integration is critical. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Skander Yavar, to talk about IT due diligence.
Thanks, Kristen. Well done. And Jim, appreciate M&A Leadership Council having us here today. I wanted to spend a few minutes really talking about some of the value and approach around IT due diligence in the transaction lifecycle and how it can help benefit a transaction from an awareness perspective. So if you talk about some of the primary objectives around an IT diligence, and this should be similar to the finance, tax, commercial, and HR diligence processes, it's really understanding the target company and what their capabilities are today, evaluating those capabilities from a technology, process, people perspective against the buyer's capabilities, and in the instance where there's 100% integration as a goal, really understanding those gaps to walk into that closed process with your eyes wide open. It's important that the buyer understands if there's any insurmountable skills, risks, or areas that need to be filled. Now, it's not often that we see an IT due diligence effort result in mishandling of a transaction or the cause for a transaction actually not going through, but it still has many times proven to influence the buying price and buying position in a transaction. The other idea here is to gather as much information as possible from an IT assets and liabilities perspective to know what you're dealing with, and as often as possible where you can, start preparing for that post-transaction integration effort as soon as possible. Some of the common mistakes that we've seen in regards to IT due diligence that result from this type of process is really identifying, to Kristen's point, a lack of controls around cybersecurity, physical security, and security within the target company. There's often a tendency for previous technology leadership to let the support costs for some of the major finance, accounting, and operational platforms go out of maintenance, and often that results in some type of licensing audit and the need to upgrade systems to current versions of software or potentially migrate to the buyer system if that's deemed a better platform. The late identification of buried costs, whether it's with data centers, additional overhead from a resource perspective. Lack of planning often brings IT late to the table, and ultimately matching the maturation between the two companies. If that has to be on the same page, it's critical to understand that as soon as possible, so we're not dealing with a very mature company and a less mature company and trying to fight those gaps post-transaction close. This is an interesting bit of information, really in driving the role of IT in creating synergies. While it's often viewed that IT is a cost center for organizations, we tend to think of technology and the IT group as an enabling body for the business. And up to 40% of cost synergies are enabled by the IT group. And only a quarter of those are done wholly within IT. So it's important that we spend as much time as possible really understanding the IT organization through the diligence process so that you can go into the transaction with the eyes wide open. More and more we're seeing that strong IT leaders in target companies are taken to position that they can help enable a competitive advantage and differentiation within their company's business, and we're starting to see IT due diligence being self-imposed on the sell side of a transaction so that companies can make sure that they're putting their organization in the best light possible when they're up for sale. From an integration strategy and planning lifecycle perspective, I think the key takeaway here is to try and do this as early as possible in the transaction lifecycle. Once the transaction closes, it's really too late to start bringing together the IT leadership teams from both entities to start the planning process. We'd like to see companies out there doing that as part of the pre-close planning process so that you can go into the close in the first 100 days of the integration with a clear plan in mind, with people that are going to be part of that integration process informed as early as possible so that really by the time the transaction closes, we can actually get to work. Some of the risk factors, at least from a CIO's perspective around IT due diligence that you should be looking out for is really outdated or obsolete systems, lack of documentation, desktop procedures, business processes for key systems that are supported. Kristen mentioned the potential risk for security and compliance areas. The idea of having really a decentralized organization in the target company with various versions of systems and processes driving those, you may be looking at a very big transformation and standardization project post-transaction close if that's what's required. So understanding really how the target's IT organization has really driven a platform that's common for data and process is critical. And then what are you getting? At the end of the day, it's really people and the processes that you run that really drive the IT capabilities of the organization. How are those people performing today? Are they those that are future-facing and looking for continuous improvement opportunities and really helping technology enable business synergies, or are they at a point where they've let systems lapse and maybe aren't the best performers out there? It's good to have a clear understanding of that. So some best practices when you're focused on an IT due diligence effort that we always try to be comprehensive within is really hitting all the aspects of the IT organization, from the people in the organization itself to a plan. Does the organization have a multi-year plan that they're executing against that really helps drive business enablers in that enterprise strategy? And if they do, is it something written that you can put your eyes on and logically understand? What are some of the governance and control procedures? You know, IT is one of those areas where people end up with pet projects. And do they have that situation today? Is there a bunch of shadow IT groups within the business that because of whatever right or wrong reasons, they've been disgruntled with the IT organization and they are now building their own systems and procuring their own technology? If that's the case, there may be a governance issue there. The IT tools and applications, are they serving the business well? Are they up to date from a maintenance perspective? How's the architecture and infrastructure? Is the target company pursuing new cutting-edge technology and putting themselves in a position to be, while on the bleeding edge of technology, a guinea pig for that technology, and is that a risk point? And then from a financial perspective, what's the percentage of spend to revenue that IT is costing? And if it's not a technology-facing company that has technology as a competitive advantage, is it too little or is it too much? Those are questions that we tend to ask. And with that said, I'd love to turn it over back to Jim for a final word about our upcoming event.
Thanks, Iskander. Listen, everyone, you just got a great taste of the kind of competency that is present in many of our events that we hold in terms of training the M&A community. And I want to thank Kristen and Iskander for providing this preview, if you will, of one of our most popular training events. The next start of M&A Due Diligence is going to be held on June 20th through the 23rd in Denver, Colorado. And I want to personally invite everyone on this webinar who's responsible for M&A due diligence to register for this 3-day event. And there's still a few seats left. Listen, if you have any questions about today's topic, please feel free to send them through our website, or you can pick up a phone and even call. But it's really critical, as you've heard today, that there is major change taking place in the fundamentals of due diligence and the requirements by companies to perform at a much higher, much broader, and much deeper level. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.